Danny, it's great to meet you, man. Thank you for taking
Yeah.
a minute out today. So let's begin our journey into your work by asking you this. 5 years ago, this pandemic was raging, changed everything for all of us. How did you survive the pandemic of 2020, and how has it radiated into what you do in 2025?
Well, the one thing about the pandemic in 2020 that I did is I just communicated with people, right? So what I mean is I have a business or a couple businesses, but I have a gym.
Yeah.
And 2020 pandemic for a gym owner was definitely a challenging time because we couldn't have people in the building, right? And so what we did is we were ready to pivot quickly. Like we kind of saw it come in. We thought, oh man, they're probably gonna close us down. At that time, we didn't know how serious, like, should we close down ourselves before they make us do it? There's all this decisions to be made. And so we just said, okay, well, what are we going to do is we're just going to go to online training for our clients.
Yeah.
And so we just basically turned that on right away, told everybody, hey, this is available since you can't come in. We're live streaming classes every day. You can watch them, the recordings or follow along live. If you need some dumbbells at home, you can borrow them from the gym. We checked out equipment to our members and then went doing online classes the next day, basically. And then also what we did, this is where the communication piece really comes in. I said, hey, we understand that you're not getting necessarily all the services that you would get if you were here and had a coach in front of you. So we do have an option to, instead of just going on hold, is, we'll cut your membership down to like 30% of what you're paying now. And that way you can still get the online stuff, whatever. And just fill this out if that's what you want to do. And what we got, it was overwhelming support because they understood they wanted a gym to be there when the thing was over. Right. And so about, maybe 30% of our clients said, yep, sounds good. I'll take that 30% lower rate. And then maybe 20% went on hold. And then the other 50% actually just didn't say anything. Or we got messages saying, you better not keep charging me my full rate. We understand this is hard. Like all of our bills didn't stop and they knew
Yeah.
that. And so that communicating with people really made a big difference. And we got a ton of support. And then same thing with our landlord. We went and talked to him. And when I called him, I didn't know exactly how the conversation was going to go. I was going to see, hey, basically, like, what can we do to work together? Right. And we'd been in that building for 10 years at that point. And he said, I'm so glad you called. I was actually up last night worried about you. We're going to help you out. Like basically, until you can get people in your doors, don't pay us.
Wow.
Which was, above and beyond what I expected from him.
Yeah.
But the point of this is that how we got through it is talking to people, an honest, open communication. And that's something I talk about a lot now. And like in the book, Winner Next Hour, is people are so important. And like, you just got to use your words, man. Like you just got to tell people, talk to them. And it's not necessarily always asking for help or asking for a handout, just communicating, right?
Yeah.
And saying, hey, this is what I'm going to do. This is what my struggles are. And you'd be amazed how much people want to help you, if you approach it that way.
Absolutely. So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do right now. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds. It's career day, and the kid
Sounds
in the
great.
back of the room is like, hey, what do you do for a living? How do you answer them?
What do I do for a living? The easy answer, usually I say, I own a gym.
Yeah.
There's a lot more going on, but that's something people can wrap their mind around, right? So I have a gym, Excel Health and Fitness. We've been open since 2008. And so we're going on 17 years and we've had incredible results, right? We've had dozens of people that lose over 100 pounds. We have people that, after their, moms that after having kids decided to get back into fitness and found out that they're actually in better shape now in their mid 30s with 3 kids than they were back in high school, right?
Yeah.
We have a program for senior citizens, which is super fun. They have a great time with that. Then I also have an e-commerce company, Caffeine and Kilos. And so we sell coffee and apparel online in the fitness space. So it's clothes that you can work out in or you can wear to your niece's birthday party, right?
Yeah.
And then also really good coffee with that. And that could be because coffee and fitness go hand in hand. So those
Absolutely.
are the main things. And then most recently, I'm an author and a public speaker. So I
Yeah.
wrote a book. It's called Win Your Next Hour, which helps people get unstuck and pursue and accomplish what a goal they have. I always thought goal setting seminars are funny. Like you can set a goal, but Well, let's do a goal accomplishing seminar. Let's teach you
Yeah,
how to accomplish your goals, right?
that's it. I totally agree. So, what did you want to be when you were 12 years old? What was your dream job?
Yeah, I don't know. I never had like well, I mean, I want to be a firefighter. That
Yeah,
always seemed fun, right?
sure. Yeah,
Hang out with a bunch of guys, riding a big truck, all that type of stuff,
yeah.
be a hero. But I always knew I wanted to do something entrepreneurial. My grandfather grew up very poor, right? I'm talking to the point to where at one point out in Texas, his parents had to put him and his siblings in an orphanage because they couldn't afford to feed him, right?
Wow.
And he goes from that background to he started buying some cheap lots and building some, like little warehouse spaces on them and businesses, and he started a heating and air conditioning business in the 70s when people started putting those in houses and really did well for himself. And so when I was a kid, I was like 10 years old, and sometimes over the summer, he'd be like, "Hey, I need some extra help today, and I can go to the get a laborer, from the day labor company, or you can come help me out." I said, "Yeah, sounds great." And so I'd go and work for $4 or $5 an hour, and he's, "Oh, I've got this rental unit. We need to build a wall," and I'd help him build a wall. But those experiences at the time, I didn't necessarily realize it, but it was just very much a, hey, look, like there's a million ways to make money. You don't have to have a job working for someone else. My father ran the air conditioning company. And so I grew up in a household where, my dad's job was the business that he owned, right?
Yeah.
And, he got it. And my grandfather started it and, has some rental properties and doing some stuff like that. And so I always kind of knew that I wanted to do something entrepreneurial, that was an option, and that, do something yourself and create something. And that could be a lot of fun.
So, talk to me a little bit about heroes. Who was your grandfather? Who was the hero that's inspired you to become who you are?
Yeah, I mean, really, he definitely the patriarch. Like I said, his background was pretty nuts. I didn't really learn about that stuff until I was older,
Yeah.
and then my parents are telling me, I'm like, what? This is crazy. But yeah, I mean, went from, like I said, dirt poor. Then they moved out to California, and his dad basically worked as a farmhand to an extent. Like they would travel up and down the state with crops, like whatever crops were in, almost like the Dust Bowl type of a thing.
Yeah.
And then he got a job here for the irrigation district, and they were able to settle down and stayed in one place, and then like went from there. And so yeah, just seeing the things that he did growing up, going from nothing to he didn't. I don't know if he had a 401k, but that wasn't really their retirement. It was these properties that he had acquired over time and built from scratch and doing that thing, and it was just an interesting view of money and possibilities of like, oh, so you don't have to, follow these sacred cows, right? Like there's different ways to do things. And like, oh, look, their retirement is these checks they get in the mail from people renting their properties, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I would say probably my grandfather would be a great example of a hero, of someone who, exemplified doing things differently and really leading by example. Also, he was a great guy. Everybody loved him. He knew everyone in town, right? Which I've learned, when you own a business in town, you end up knowing everyone in town,
Yeah. Yeah.
type
For
of
sure.
thing. So yeah, I think that'd be it.
What about entrepreneurs? When you look at the landscape of entrepreneurs that exist out there, is there anyone that you admire that you look up to for the way that they've done it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few people. I've got a friend, Bedros Koulian, who Bedros actually started Fit Body Boot Camp, which grew, to whatever 800 franchises, worldwide, and just talking to him and the way he's done, I'm kind of a similar thing. Like he grew up as an immigrant. They immigrated from Armenia, communist Armenia, when he was a kid, and they had absolutely nothing. And then he went from that to starting little, training business and opening a gym. And I believe now all of his companies combined, I think he does like $200 million annual revenue.
Wow.
And this is from scratch. So I look up to him. Also, there's a guy, Noah Kagan. And Noah has a book that's called $1 Million Weekend, which is kind of a kitschy name for a book that's actually very tactical, right? Like here's some, like, do this, do this, do this, like do these steps. And Noah taught me some stuff. He reached out to me on a cold email. He had heard of Caffeine Kilos, seen it somewhere, and then bought some stuff and was like, this company's really interesting. And so he just sent an email, said, hey, what's up? I'm Noah. uh, whatever. I'd love to talk, love to get you to know you. And so we hopped on a phone call. Next time I was in Austin, he took me out to lunch, and we've kept in touch ever since then.
Wow.
And so he has kind of a portfolio of companies that all do the same thing. It's more in the e-commerce space. And so he has a one business called sumo.com. Anyway, they sell it's almost like Groupon, but for business tools and software
Okay.
tools and stuff. And kind of the same thing. He started off, he was whatever, like the 30th employee at Facebook, working directly with Zuck and stuff. And then, but for like a little less than a year, hopped around a little, then realized he needed to do his own thing. And so he has this journey where it started his own thing and grew it. And I really admire his same thing, like his networking abilities. Like, yeah, I know him from a cold email, right?
Yeah.
And he does that stuff all the time. I talk to someone who knows him, and it's like almost it's similar stories. It's like, oh yeah, I ran into him, and now he just like calls me and helps me with stuff.
That's
He just
awesome.
randomly calls me. How's it going? Good. Hey, what's your biggest problem right now? And I'll tell him, and he's like, oh, maybe try this. Like he would call just to talk and to help with nothing expected in return, right?
That's very cool.
And so I love that type of thing.
Absolutely.
So I try to do it myself now.
Yeah, totally. No, it's a great model. So let me ask you this. In the world of entrepreneurship, it's all about taking risks. What's the
Yeah.
biggest risk that you've taken in your career?
Well, so I was a teacher for a while, and
Yeah.
so I quit teaching to go all in on business. I don't feel like that was super risky because I got the degree. Like, really, I could just renew my credential and go back to teaching. But my wife's a little more conservative than I am, and so there was that. But I'll tell you, I think the biggest risk I did was the gym was up and running, and another gym owner, a friend of mine, called me and said he wanted to host this competition, get the best weightlifters in the country to come out, and this whole thing, this like big like pie in the sky, kind of dream. I said, yeah, sounds fun. And so it'll be like a little summer job for me. And so we started putting this thing together. Well, at that time, I was competing in Olympic style weightlifting at a national level, and I knew kind of the best lifters. And so I said, well, yeah, we can get them out as long as we pay them a cash prize, but we need to have a date before we invite them. We need to have a venue before we have a date. And so we went and looked at some venues, and this one was perfect. So, oh, this is great. This is exactly what we need. However, there was a deposit need to put down. It was like $7,500 deposit. And like we didn't have a business. We just had this idea of hosting this event. So it didn't feel like a huge risk because I just did the math. Said, okay, well, if we get, we're going to do a competition earlier in the day. If we get so many entries, then that'll cover that, no problem. And between my gym and your gym and all of our friends in the area, and I'm sure we'll get that many people. And so I just got out a credit card and paid the deposit without calling my wife, which I would not necessarily recommend. But I was confident that we were going to do it. But I mean, that was, $7,000 right there with really like nothing to show for it immediately,
Yeah.
right? Just put on the credit card, and I hope we make this the next month so I can pay it off right away.
Wow.
And we did. It
Yeah.
ended up being no big deal. It actually, that's what turned into Caffeine and Kilos, to a company that did over $1 million in its first calendar year.
Wow.
And that was completely incidental. We were just going to do this competition. People really liked it. They liked the concept. The name Caffeine and Kilos is fun. They wanted shirts. So we said, okay, we should make some shirts for the event. We should probably make coffee too, if we're going to call it Caffeine and Kilos. And so we got that figured out. And then people wanted to buy it. We ended up selling the shirts and coffee online before the event even happened. And it basically launched into this. It ended up being essentially like a launch party for the brand. And so that little risk, at the beginning turned out to be, I mean, that was 2013. So we're going on 12 years now in that business. That was almost an accident.
So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight, ran into the 18-year-old version of you getting ready to charge out into the world, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained, what advice would you give that young version of you?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, I don't know, man. I think that I would probably say to yeah, just to keep following opportunities. Like, don't be scared of opportunities. A lot of people have something they want to do, but it's just not happening, or they're not doing it. They're not taking action on it. And a lot of times they think that they just don't have the chance. They don't have the opportunities. Where, I mean, they're everywhere. Opportunities are out there if you're looking for them, right? Or if you see them as opportunities.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of it, is like, hey, just like, you know what you want to do, think about what you want to do, and don't be afraid to take these opportunities as they come up. I was always pretty good about that, but I think I would have leaned into it more, even when I was younger, right?
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What's been your work-life balance? How do you view all of that? Is that an
Yeah,
equilibrium? How do you go about that?
that's a great question. So when I stopped teaching to go all in on business, I realized that I need to like figure out what I'm doing, you know?
Yeah.
And so I hired a coach. I hired a business coach. I hired Craig Ballantyne, and he's really big on this. And he has a system that is fantastic that I implemented because I have a couple kids. So at this time, I have the gym, and then we just started this company, Caffeine Kilos, and also at that same, I had a baby at that time, right? Now we have two kids; they're 12 and 8. That's great. But so juggling all that, so what I do is you have to prioritize the real important stuff first. Meaning, most people, they do all the business stuff, and then your family and your own self kind of gets what's left over.
Yeah.
Well, that's a pretty quick road to burnout, right? So go the opposite way. Say, okay, what are my number one rocks? What am I going to do? Well, we eat dinner pretty early, around like 5:30 every day. So I'm going to be home, not leaving. I'm going to be home at 5 o'clock every day that I'm in town, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to be home for dinner every night. So from, call it 5 o'clock until 7:30 or 8 o'clock when the kids are in bed, that is time with the family. And then the rest of everything goes around that, right? And so then so then I put that in my schedule. I said, okay, when am I going to work out to stay healthy? And I put that in my schedule. And so those things go in my schedule first. And then I build in work blocks around that.
So let me ask you this. Of everything that you've done and accomplished up to this point in your life, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
What am I ultimately the proudest of? Um, just plugging in my computer right here.
Oh, yeah.
The I would say, um, man, I think the truth is, what I'm the proudest of is spending the time with my kids.
Yeah.
'Cause, you hear it all the time from people, that are really career driven, and, later in life, they wish they would have done more of that, and all that type of thing. Um, and I think it's really important. And as they are getting older, I mean, they're my youngest, or my oldest is going to be in 7th grade. So not real young, not real old. But, you get these apps on your phone now, pops up a picture from when she was 2. And I'm like, man, like I miss that kid. Right.
Yeah.
Because, every year it's almost like a different kid as they grow and change, and, go through different stages. And man, I'd say that's my biggest fear in life is, you know, sometimes you want them to grow up and stuff so fast, but there's gonna be a time where they're not in the house anymore. They're out of the house and older and grown. And I'll wish I would have spent more time, with them, and in their activities, and just, doing stuff as a family. So that's something we've been pretty good about, is we do a couple family vacations every year. We keep them involved in different things like sports, and make sure to get them to practice and go to all their games. As long as I'm in town, I'm going, all that type of stuff. So I'd say at this point, I am most proud of having that time with my family, while also, growing the businesses and different stuff like that.
So at the end of the day, Danny, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone that you know, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
And I'll tell you what, that's a great point. Great question. I think it's really important to treat people the right way. Help out people when they need it. Maybe help them out if they know they need it or not, right? In the appropriate ways, obviously.
Yeah.
I'd say in my perception of myself, who I am, I'm somebody who cares about others and wants to see others win, wants to see others do well. I get so fired up when other people accomplish things. And through everything I've done, I'd say what I'm really best at is I'm a coach. That's really what I wanted to do. That's why I pursued teaching, is I wanted to coach wrestling. And I thought, well, what job what I was in college and I had this epiphany because I switched to be a economics major for a while. And I was like, well, what job am I going to leave at 3 o'clock to go to practice? Like, that's not going to happen. I guess like I really need to go back and be a teacher. And so that I could be there at school on campus and, at the end of the day, be there and ready to coach. And so I had those experiences coaching wrestling and then the gym, coaching people in fitness. I've done some, again, when I was competing in weightlifting, I was coaching some weightlifting, had the opportunity to coach a couple Olympians during, not through all of their training, but like at some different meets, you need someone in back kind of doing their warm-ups and coaching them through some different stuff like that. Traveling around, coach, I've probably done 100 or more like weightlifting seminars around the country. I just love to coach and to help people. I love seeing other people achieve things, and so that's something I'm really passionate about.
So your book, if anyone wants to pick up a copy, Caffeine and Kilos, get involved with anything, any of the good business in your world, where's the best place to go?
So for the book, it's called Win Your Next Hour. So if you just go to winyournexthour.com, and what's interesting, it's not this book of theory, it's tactical things you can do. It's like you got something you want to do. Maybe it's lose 40 pounds. Maybe it's hike the Appalachian Trail. You want to start a little side hustle. It's a coffee cart, whatever it is. You can follow the steps, right? Just go follow these steps, do these things, and you can do whatever you want, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. So that's really fun about it. It's not just theory, it's tactical application,
Absolutely.
Anyways, so go to winyournexthour.com. And then, otherwise you can go get some coffee from, or shirts from Caffeine and Kilos. But if you just, best place to find me probably is on Instagram. You can find kind of everything else got going on through there. So that's just Danny_Lehr, and that's Lehr.
Okay. Danny, this has been great. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your story. Best of luck with everything.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Hey.
Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.